Welcome to Nature's Neighbor. I'm your host, Melanie Blankenship, joined with my co-host, Josh Carmichael Environmental. Miguel's adjusting me again, because that's,
I told you, don't block your face.
We have professionals for a reason.
That's right.
Some of us, sillies have to have professionals keeping
Some
us
of us
in
need
line.
handlers.
And after having the weekend that we just did, I will take any help mentally and physically that I can.
Yeah.
We cannot start Nature's Neighbor without talking about the weather. First of all, I have the biggest question. Where did this come from?
It's winter. Winter is coming.
No, it's not yet. We still have a month. Remember I told you we have a month.
Yeah, it's a pretty good early storm.
This is crazy. This is
on the heels of another crazy, freak storm last time.
Yeah, but the funny thing is I looked at, I'm constantly looking at weather, forecast. On Monday of last week, it called for a little storm on Thursday. There was nothing like this.
Yeah, it stacked up on itself.
And then all of a sudden Wednesday, it was like boom, ba boom, ba boom, and it was like, I might sound like I'm complaining a little bit, but at the same time, I'm actually in shock.
Yeah.
I was literally shocked to see it coming down like it was and how much it was coming down.
It's pretty steady, days here of a lot of inches. I don't know what you've gotten so far.
This morning at 8:30 on our gauge, it was 4.39, and since Thursday.
Yeah.
So 4.39, and we've been raining all
been raining
day,
today,
so I haven't been home to check it. I don't have a rain gauge here. I use the community rain gauge.
Yeah.
To gauge what Templeton, and I haven't looked at it. So we're here.
Maybe half of what you
Templeton,
get.
California. So November 17th, which is there's an old wise tale that used to kind of resonate in all of us farmers, but is if you got measurable rain before Thanksgiving, you were going to have a drier spring. And as a fruit farmer, I'll be honest with you, You don't like the blossoms getting knocked off? We have not had a dry spring in a long time.
We've had really dry early parts of the year and then late rains.
Mm-hmm. And cold summers, so it's been a challenge. It's been a little struggling in the sense of trying to get certain things to produce at a certain time so that you can sell it. Customers, I have people that come in at the same time every year looking for a certain crop. And, when I, explain, hey guys, it's weather, and people don't understand that still, I don't think, as much as us.
We're
people
not as
that
connected to the seasons and the soil as a society. So I think that, that makes, I don't know if it makes sense, but it makes sense from that point of view. It makes sense to us,
but I don't know if it makes sense to them. Yeah. And just like what we're coming off this weekend with the olive press, people were like, well, did you do it the same time last year? No, last year we actually did it a little later. Fruit came off later last year. Mm-hmm. So it was, we base it on that. Last year we did take a little bit more comments into consideration. There were people asking for small press to be later in the season, more closer to the Thanksgiving holiday, because they would have people coming in on vacation, and so they thought that they were going to get, more manual labor, kind of thing. So we did it a week later last year. But little did we know that we were going to have a 2.5 week early frost and early rain last year as well. So last year weather played havoc on an already smaller crop.
Yeah.
This year, no frost, consistent temperatures. Considering olives will do this one year heavy, 1 year off. This year was like, everybody came bearing, and I have to, giggle a little is the fact that people were like on time, 7:30 on the dot. We were full in the parking lot. They were ready to press. And I feel sorry for some of them that had to wait a little while because the amount of rain that was coming down, you don't want to mix water and oil. Right? And so
they don't mix.
Yeah, they don't mix. So it was, and how much it was coming down. So there was a little bit of a lag, and then, we had to lube up the press, and there was
get some pounds in there.
There was a lot of people that were bringing a good amount. So grateful for that. But it was those guys that lubed it, got the water balanced in there for us so that the small press could continue.
Yeah.
So, you know, I saw that you helped Oak Creek Commons, tongue twisted today, harvest some olives. You had, would you say a 5.5 gallon bucket of olives?
Yeah, they didn't get a bunch of volunteers there, but, you know, a couple came in that wanted to, you know, really kind of get a feel for it and stuff. So they were able to bring in a few buckets full and, you know, go home with like a good quart of oil that we did a little sampling
I was going to say,
afterwards, you know,
saw
in the parking
picture
lot.
of you guys in the parking lot with fresh bread from our new bakery in here.
Yeah.
And then dipping olive oil. I'm like, I wonder how much of that olive oil is going to make it home. But honestly, there's nothing better.
It was like liquid gold. You had to get at it. Yeah, you know, and it was a fun day. You know, the bakery really did well, I think, with hot drinks and warm goodies.
Warm bread
So, you
on
know,
a rainy day.
Yeah, it was stuff to do, you know, here for
So what'd you think
the
about the
community.
press?
Yeah, really impressive to see that, you know, process and that machine and what it's
Clotillanese.
able to do. Yeah, and the operators equally impressive, you know, experienced, you know, folks that bringing kind of their heritage too, you know, from
France.
you know, from France and the Mediterranean, you know, region where olives come from. So, you know, it's rooted well here in
You
California in our community.
You
so.
realize even Clotilde built that mill with a group of others, but like people like
Piece by
them.
piece.
Piece by piece by piece. Like, so to see how when you walk up the stairs and you see the hopper and you see the sorter and the washer, and then it's going up through the centrifuge and, you know, and then it's in the grinder. And I mean, all of us, even me who have been a part of it since that first bolt, right? Even when you walk into that mill for the first time, or it'd be, I can't even tell you how many times I've been in that mill, that smell.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing better than that smell.
Yeah.
And then to see, you know, getting grind and going into the press and then the oil coming back. And as it's going through in the waters, you know, separating from the oil and you see that beautiful gold green liquid
yeah,
just coming out. And then you have to try it, right?
Yeah.
You have to try it. So,
Yeah, no, it's pretty magic because, you know, you're bringing in a raw, you know, product. And so for people just to be able to take time and gather it and have an ability to
So
turn that
awesome.
into something that we use in our homes every day or in our lives, you know, for our health. And, you know, it just was really a fun process.
I honestly, it still just floors me to think that something like that, to me, it's so common now. To me, it's familiar. I tend to forget that it's not. And, you know, there were several people that came into the parking lot, you know, that were just driving through Templeton, not from here. And we're like, wait, what is that? You know, and I'm like, you want to try fresh pressed olive oil? I never even thought of that. I mean, I buy my, you know, they were telling me they buy it at Whole Foods or whatever, and I had to explain to them what they were buying versus what they were getting here.
Yeah.
And it's funny because people are like, I never even would have thought about that. Like, I just think that it's a label and I'm buying what it says on the label, but the olive oil that I buy does not taste like that. I'm like, well, there's a difference in age. People don't realize that, you know, do we ever question how old the food is by the time it actually gets to the grocery store shelf, you know?
Yeah.
And so, let alone any of these other products. And so, you know,
and what happens to them in processing? I mean, you know, big commodities like that, whether it's honey or it's olive
All of
oil,
it.
these things, it's such an international process. And so there's so many people stepping on it, and you got to really find who's doing the least amount of, you know,
process.
bad will to it as well, because people are faking,
But even
you know,
beyond
things
that,
like that.
let's just talk about the reality of how long and how old it is before it gets there, right? But let's also talk about the fact that health, right? Health is food. The fresher you can consume something, the more minerals, the more
More nutrients
vitamins,
are in
the
it,
more
yeah.
you're going to get, okay? Then we're going to talk about, you know, as it ages and it depreciates, right? We
Even
all
day
love
by day.
depreciation when we just
Yeah.
did our taxes,
Yeah.
you know, but the food does that too. Anything
Yeah.
does that. And,
Yeah.
you know, the oxygen breaks things down. It wants to become compost. The further you take it from harvest, and,
Compost
you know,
happens.
understanding every time that it's gone through a day or a change of temperature or whatever, it's breaking down. So you're
Yeah.
losing the health value of it. You know, you open a package, understand even how long it actually took before it even got into that package, let alone, okay, Templeton has got flies like nobody's business. It needs to freeze. So that's what I'm doing over here, swatting. But so, understanding that the age of the food by the time it gets to the grocery store shelf. So like where would you ever go to get fresh pressed olive oil? And I think at times I take it for granted, but then I have days like this once a year, and it makes me realize and reminds me why I'm doing what I'm doing and how grateful I am. But at the same time, I'm also today feeling tired, really tired, but I'm also looking at the weather, and I'm already thinking about what I have to do today to be able to make it happen next year. And again, what is wrong with me? Because I don't think very many people think like that. What did I say I want to talk about today? I want to talk about permeable soils. Does anybody understand what that means? Because what I am seeing outside as I'm driving from the west side to the east side and then back to the center, right? Come from the coastal region. I went to Creston today, and then now I'm back to Templeton. And I'm realizing healthy soils. We can say these words. There was a Healthy Soils Initiative that gave grants. Well, I'd really like to know where that grant money went. But at the same time, how do we really know if we have healthy soils? Soils that absorb, soils that smell sweet, soils that smell and look rich and alive. Soil is something alive, people. It's not something that is dead that we just have to compete with other things, or we have to inoculate it or treat it with something. Soil is something, it's a living species, right?
Yeah, that's what Earth is made of. I mean, that's why it's named Earth.
It's all of it. But that's what I'm saying. It's like we can talk about health in our food, but we can't just say, oh, I'm taking this or I'm doing this. You have to know the soil that food
comes from the
is
soil.
Coming. You can't just walk to a grocery store and buy health. You can't just sit here and say, well, it says organic, so therefore I'm eating healthy food, right? No. It's the whole picture of health. It's understanding balance. And like I just told somebody the other day when we were talking about seasonal foods and understanding, just because it's November, everybody's talking about, Thanksgiving now and pumpkin pies and all this stuff. I'm like, you realize that most winter squash that goes into making pumpkins was harvested in September.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those actually have a natural storage.
Yeah,
that
they're
are going
made
to
to be
carry
held
the
up for the winter.
beta-carotene and the sugar. That is a winter-style food.
And all those squashes taste just as good in pie.
It doesn't have to be a pumpkin,
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's understanding the seasons of the soil that it is coming from, and it also, to the customer that is stimulating this conversation with you, was because have we gotten away from the familiarity or the recognizing or the discussion of true healthy foods? Because people are tending, I see of them, you saw the amount of people that were walking in and out. There are more people, again, worried about their pharmaceuticals and their physicians than they are about what they're consuming. And so I'm like, wait, I'm struggling finding a doctor. I'm struggling with my insurance premiums right now. But at the same time, I'm not as worried about that because I am more focused on taking care of myself.
Putting good inputs in to get inputs out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that conversation, it's sort of like nature in general. It's like you can't have one thing without the other. Or you can't realize that when you tug on one thing, that it's attached to everything else in the universe. So you really enter that conversation through so many different lenses,
and it doesn't have to be complicated.
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
Well, like we said, the food is really that foundation that we're building our communities on and our gatherings and what we're, doing together, and then what we're, taking care of ourselves with. And so, food is really that first step or that first line of defense and taking care of yourself.
And I guess, too, where the topic of permeable soils is coming from is, how do you know if your soil is healthy? It's as simple as, does it does it leach? Does it allow absorption?
What does your runoff look like?
What does your runoff look like? And driving right now and seeing the differences, seeing a certain farmer that I drive by and I watch him grow, because I know there's a newer hand on that soil, and it's fun to know where he started, the legacy he left, and the new people that are on that farm and what they're doing. And I struggle within myself. Do I knock on the door and go, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. He already got that for you. He already did that, But I am finding that this next generation, or, newer people to the soil, want to figure it out differently than what they did before. So I'm trying to find my middle ground of saying maybe, I guess, I had to figure it out, sometimes easier, sometimes harder. But I did learn differently. I actually shadowed people instead of thinking I was going to do it by myself. I went out and shadowed people. The people that I learned from and still am learning from are the people that I took the time to go put myself around and listened and got dirty. I went out and became an employee, or I became a volunteer, or I became a gopher, right? Or my kids call it voluntold, And so, and it's crazy because I did that. That's where I got most of my knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's where I truly learned, by being on somebody else's soil that was farming soil first. They are all produce growers that I'm talking about, or cattle ranchers, or chicken farmers, poultry farmers, but all of them focused on the soil. And it's crazy to me, those farmers that I learned from, those farms they're still stuck. Are they in a producing American style farm? No. But they're still producing good quality food.
Yeah.
The difference is things that are being harvested off there are not like your Fuji apples or your the common things that people are going to buy. There's things that I go to these places because I know they're still growing there.
Yeah.
And so and it's exciting for the newer people that are like, I didn't even know what that was. And I'm like, well, such and such planted it back in 1997.
Yeah, yeah, so, way back when.
And they're like, and they're like, how do you eat this? How do you prepare? So I'm finding myself teaching. Super grateful that these couple of situations that I'm talking about are still there and being held on. But at the same time, it's crazy because I'm like, okay, I remember when he first opened that plot up. He aerated that soil. He dissed it, shallowly. But it was years of layering. It was composting. It was mulching, and then once he got the mulch in, then he let the sheep on it. Then the mulch started to break down, so weeds started to grow a little bit more. Yeah. And then he put chickens on it. We did chicken tractors all around it.
Fertilizing that field.
Yeah, and then we tilled it in again. So we had the fibrous material from the old mulch. We had a balance of life coming from compost that, inoculated naturally into that soil. We had soil worms and compost worms, all working in there because, having the animals on there was allowing that habitat for those good worms.
Building the, food soil web.
And then, watching this rotation, and then he started putting in perennial crop. And it's seeing the perennial crop there now. They don't have weed problems.
Yeah.
They don't have to spray.
Yeah, weeds only like open, disturbed soil. So if you're building health in the soil and vitality, and then you're putting in a crop that you desire that's taking up root space, you're not going to have to. And I think that patience and those things are really what we're losing over time. Everything wants to be quicker and quicker, or more and more immediate. What I kind of spent my day with was some friends sending me videos, of some indigenous speakers, people from the Dene tribe, and the kind of Navajo Nation, and just talking about how, we weren't following the buffalo as people might think we were, or and stuff from the outside looking in. The buffalo were following our fire. And so they used a really gentle fire, and they were able to keep, the trees and shrubs from growing in the prairie, and keep the prairie as the climax community, and bring up soil fertility, bring in, space for like echinacea, all the good herbs and things to grow. And then the buffalo would obviously follow what was the freshest, grown
Grass.
forbs and grasses and things. So, just that cycle and that time. And that's sort of something that makes me think, like, going way back and to talk about, like, how do you improve, the salmon catch every year in Northwest? Well, they go out and they're putting in the kelp forest. So if you make the kelp forest healthier and more robust and bigger, and you get more and more herring, then you get more and more food in the food web that then makes its way up the chain for all these bigger animals. So, those old ways, like we said, we're getting far and farther away from those moments, and how, this continent was really managed, and then how, old school farmers have been able to, bring life and fertility, but it's not doing it yourself. It's bringing the animals in. It's bringing in, that help and aids of technologies like fire, or bringing in certain, plants or crops and cover crops and things. So
this one
takes time.
perennial crop area. So right before they purchased the land, there was a grass fire on this land. So there was no houses or anything out on the east side. I remember the grass fire because it was really several properties over. They had old alfalfa that they had stored up, and there was an alfalfa field, and the alfalfa caught on fire, and that fire spread, and so it burned throughout this entire whole valley, right? And so it's funny that you say, the fire. It was where the fire burned for 10 plus years. It was like the most rich soil, but it burned really hot and really fast, right? There wasn't a lot of shrubs in that area, up on the hillside more, on the side of the hill, but not lower in the valley where they were farming. But what was crazy was there was like burn scar areas, and you're hearing this now in the media, where when the fire burned so hot because it had so much overgrowth, overgrowth, that the soil doesn't breathe after the fire. And there was certain areas within that grass fire that burned so hot that the water would run off. And the wera from that area would flow heavier after those fires. But it was because it was a heavier runoff instead of it actually permeable. It was leaching it in.
Yeah.
And so, what changed things? Well, it became this rotation of animal, right, in and out of there, to open up that, ashy.
Yeah, you're making divots in the soil, breaking the surface, and then you're adding, depositing fertilizers.
And then it became seeing, the wind blow, bringing in different spores. The fungi started to move. People don't realize that most mushrooms is spread with water or wind. And you definitely started to see that transform. And I get customers all the time that are like, what kind of mushrooms are these? Are these edible? Majority of mushrooms could be edible. It just depends on what you consider food versus psychedelic, or versus make you really sick.
Yeah, I always learned it as there's like pukers and eaters.
Yeah.
And so
I'm not the one to tell you to go out and try it, but I'm also going to say, instead of always thinking you got to eat that, recognize it. What is it doing?
Yes.
And I said, realistically, to me, what it means is that your soil's not breathing.
Yeah.
There's a fungi that is there that got the right amount of inoculants to allow it to grow, but it's not breathing. If you want a mushroom patch and you want to grow, you need to lock it up and make sure it stays wet, and you got to manage it all the time, right? You don't want water to flow. You don't want it to dry out. You don't want it to see sunlight. You don't want
mushrooms
all
grow
that.
in very specific areas.
Exactly.
That way.
And so if you have a huge overgrowth of rare mushrooms, you more than likely have, overgrowth of dead and dying trees, or, leaf matter.
Some food source that
you
they
have
were
to have
on.
the food source there.
Yeah, they're really there as decomposers. And so, they're good for aerating soils or breaking soils up or doing something else. So if it is something that's not, directly edible, whatever, to you, it might be a benefit, or like you said, it could be a sign of what's happening within those soils.
Yeah, read the soils. Understand what it is it's trying to tell you. But I'm going to tell you on my end of it. So we've been, cleaning up understories and chipping a lot. And so I'm seeing some new shroom growth, and different, what am I shredding? I'm shredding down oaks, bay, a little bit of eucalyptus. There's a little bit in there, not much, just a little bit. And it's funny because the types of mushrooms that are growing, my chickens love. So, you want to talk about getting animals across the soil. chickens love that. And I don't have to worry about if they're edible or not. I'm not getting chanterelles, so
Darn it.
and if it's
Yeah.
not chanterelles or morels or
Oysters
porcinis
or
or
something.
oysters, or turkey tails,
Yeah.
I'm not interested in harvesting, but my chickens are. So I've been letting them get in,
Yeah.
and it's crazy because just in that aeration and that opening up of that soil, it's already transforming. It's
Yeah,
so
mulching is
beautiful.
adding that moisture that is allowing that next level to grow. Like if you have bacteria growth there, great. Those organisms are happy in a one-time environment, but something more long-term or something that is more like fungi dominant, then you're going to have a little richer, deeper soils build up.
And then all this discussion for some people that don't farm or garden, but everybody is talking about healthy food or medicine or food for all. We have too much political activity going on in our media right now, and we are all disconnected, right? But at the same time, it's like instead of just giving food away to consumers, to somebody that says that they are in need of food, I wish that we could take this opportunity and really teach people the soil that they're standing on so that they can feed themselves.
Or even just how to grow, right?
And how
Like you're
to grow
saying.
it, but
Yeah. Give a man a fish, eats for a day.
Shadow these people so you learn, be a part. But I'm also telling the people, this newer generation and the older generation, be more inviting to this next generation. I witness it all the time. Yes, I have a lot of things going on, but I never have too many things going on that if someone in need needs to know, hey, Mel, I want to be able to do this, or why is my food doing this, or why is my soil doing this, I'm going to find the time. I might not be as quick as I used to because I do have a lot of things on my plate, but I do believe that people deserve the time. But also at the same time, I'm thinking of my husband in my head going, one time you're going to need to figure out how to balance that, because have you noticed people will just want to talk, but they're not really walking the walk. They'll talk the talk, but they won't walk. Oh my goodness, fires drive me crazy. They won't walk the walk. And so, that's resonating in me and going, yeah, I have noticed that. Like people are talking it, but they're not doing it. So what is it that we need to ignite in them to do it? If we all want to talk about it, right? We all want to do something. What is it that we need to do? If you're coming to me and asking me, what do I need to give you to be able to get you to feel confident in doing it?
Yeah. I had sort of that conversation after, left that day. It was like someone who, I was meeting with was like, oh, I love, nutrition and studying what, effects food have on the body or medicines or how to put good inputs in, but they didn't know really how to grow those inputs or what, was needed there. And it really just comes down to, that time in or just experience. Like you said, it's hands-on and it's doing it. And I think that once you sort of get your hands in the dirt, so to speak, and get your hands dirty, you're going to sort of be amazed at you being part of the system and not like, everything being dependent upon you. Like people like, it seems like it takes so much. I was like, it doesn't. You have a planting moment, maybe like you said, you have a field prep and then you have a planting and then you have harvesting and then you're going to have, repetition of, what goes in to follow that crop, in the next season or something. But the more and more I think that you put your hand to something, the easier that thing is to uptake. And I think with food, just like with the olive oil pressing here, I think, like I said, a few people just bringing in some buckets they were landscape trees in their community that were not going to fruit, but because so many other trees are planted, right? They had great, beautiful fruit.
They were beautiful.
So, they had some really nice big olives, and really ripe. And so they, were able to turn something, into another longer living, kind of self-stable product of the oil. And so
there was a couple with a couple others that have a community, that they live in a community here in Templeton. And same thing, the whole entire housing community had Wilsonias planted. So there was probably 30 homes, 40 homes. Every single one of those Wilsonias are producing. But it was kind of cool because this group of people went door to door, knocked on there saying that, hey, that place down in Templeton, Nature's Touch, is offering a community press. Can we pick your olives? We will deal with going and getting it pressed and pay for it. because we want to do this for the community.
Yeah.
And then another person got involved, and so this couple goes and picks. This couple comes and helps, and there's kind of like this pitching in, paying the due kind of thing. And then there's another couple that comes in and puts all the harvest into little jars, separates it to every house, and goes and knocks on the door and goes, here, this is your olive oil from the community. And I was just like, why can we not have more of those kind of people? Like, I wanted to tell the story because I'm like, that's the example.
Well, that's what we say it takes. Like, none of us can do these things alone.
And but the biggest thing is don't expect this to happen. Reach out and make it happen.
Yeah.
And like
do your part.
There's a lady that I know, and her name's Ashley. I need to reach back out to her. She, she's doing her other dues, her other job. She's going out right now and planting gardens for people. Just because she doesn't have enough soil, she wants to just plant. So if somebody has a raised bed or a little area, wine barrel, wants something to grow, she's willing to kind of set up a schedule, just plant it for you, help you harvest it, and keep it growing. Be available to answer questions. And I asked her, I said, are you asking for like donations? She's like, I'm not even a professional, in any of this. And she's like, I just want people to have access to their own food. And I'm like, these are the kind of stories
look
that
how little it takes to really start something like that.
And I don't know how many people I know that are down in our homeless encampments talking to the ones that are willing to listen, that want something different, and are doing the same things. Do they go out and are in KSBY or wherever media? Are they here? No, because they're living their own lives, but they're doing it. And this is where it's like, what is it going to take no matter who you are or what you are, you don't have to grow. You don't have to, eat like we do all the time. But at the same time, be a part of your community. It's for me, being a community farmer or being a farmer and doing what I do, it's not just about growing food. It is about being a part of this relationship. It's about being a part of this community and starting it, but leaving it better than what I came into it. And the only way I see that happening is the more people being involved and offering a hand. It's not always about money. Everything seems to be, well, that finance is not there anymore, or they overspent this, or oop, that person misappropriated that money for that. There's too much of that.
Yeah.
Why do we have to do it about money? Why can't it just be about it's the right thing to do?
Work and money can't buy you love. So, it's really, like you said, putting our hands together. I think that's a beautiful, concept for the Vintage Club coming together, how we can help people to, find others that they can, start to team with in their community to get things done and processed or learn from, or, really get that experience that it takes to want to do these things over and over.
But also to hear my words, it doesn't need to always be about money, but money has to be involved because we have to pay our bills.
Yeah.
There's bills to be paid.
Well, resources are going to be involved. So whatever, it costs to get those resources, it costs.
But at the same time, we need to also put value back into people that show up. Doing as many organization fundraisers and things that I do, it's always the same people that show up. And that's, and I'm being brutally honest with it. It's like, when are differences? And then where's our youth? I've been saying this, but where is our youth? But where are the parents or the guardians incentivizing those people? I said this last show, I am floored when I'm out doing stuff and how many people are doing nothing. There is this age group that might go to school a little bit but are not working. And what are they doing with all their free time? They're doing nothing. Video games or social media or
they're
something.
Bored.
Or they're bored.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you
It's a lot more they could learn.
Yes. I'm like,
do.
Maybe it's me, but my kids used to say, Mom, we couldn't sleep past 10 o'clock in your house. And I'm like, why would you? Half the day is gone. You know what I mean? There's things that can be done. You might not see the importance of it now, but your future is going to show what you put into it now. The things that I learned in my youth by showing up is what is helping me survive today. And that's where it's like, how do we incentivize this? How do we have healthy soils? How do we understand the weather better?
It's usually by feeding people. So I think we got to get through the people through their stomachs, and hoping to do more and more ways of, people coming here and shopping, people coming here and, taking part in the club or processing or some of our
have an event
dinner
this
events.
weekend.
Speaking
what's
of
your
people coming together in the community, thank you. I really am happy that we are going to do essentially a Friendsgiving Day where everyone who comes down to help do a big push on this food forest planting for the Northern Chumash Tribal Council at their Halama Valley Ranch in Lompoc. They had some grant monies they were able to get. They have to put everything in within the next month or so. And so really looking for a lot of people that, want to learn more about, like we said, how do we build up, our soils and do more, perennial farming or things that,
soil is beautiful.
give us.
That valley is beautiful. That soil is beautiful.
Yeah, it's in a great place. So we're going to be at the Halama Valley Ranch. And so this is going to be Saturday the 22nd. And it's going to be going pretty much all day. So between 9 and 5 that day, we're going to be putting in a whole bunch of, essentially it was a USDA grant for like food forestry. And so, like I was saying, all the indigenous, people of this land, that's what they were doing. They were tending the land to have food coming from, the forest to the plains to the ocean. And so we're putting in all kinds of different, native plants. We're putting in different fruits for their orchards, ways that they can help host and have more events down the road. And so they want to give anyone who could come out, some kind of, gift certificates or foods. We're going to have a big barbecue dinner, from 3:00 on. And so again, from 9 to 5 on Saturday the 22nd at Halama Valley Ranch. There's an Eventbrite page. So through the Northern Chumash Tribal Council, you can find the Eventbrite page for this food forest planting on Saturday. And again, through Facebook or reach out, to us here, and we'll get that information to you guys. But it's going to be something that everyone can come out, and really join hands in the community. And it's really great to, have that unity between, all the indigenous, folks that have been on this land forever and all the settlers to be able to say, hey, what can we put in together, and how can we, really start to understand, the land better in this place and the culture and the stories that go with it. And I think that's one way that I see a lot of, that knowledge growing, is when people can come to it and find, some whether it's through the stories or through
all
the
of
work
our local tribes.
or the
I
food.
can't think of a better way to learn, to be connected with the history.
Talk about people that have notes on
the
the
sad
the
thing
land
is
here.
the majority of us, we haven't, not with the exception of me, I do hang out with my 91-year-old grandmother, but there's a lot of us that don't have that connection to the past, but
Or to the elders of our
elders of even within
group.
our own cultures, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't matter anymore. It should have never, but at the same time, why can't we learn from or honor with, it doesn't need to be, you versus
Yes, not so
them,
segregated.
or
We've all moved around the world so much, and I think, growing up
We're
here
on
in
the same
California
soil.
and growing up in this county for so long, this is the land I'm from too. And so, that's where we really can get along. It doesn't matter who you are, it matters where you are. And so what does it mean to live locally? What does it mean to live on the land that you're on? And we know that, there are tribes across, this country that we live in now. There's tribes that settled
How
every
many
land.
tribes, do you know the number? We have to find this out.
I was
but
just
I'm
listening to a lot of tribal things today. So there were some speakers, like TEDx talks about there are over 300 languages that were, native to the continent. There are over 500 something federally recognized tribes, plus hundreds more of state recognized tribes, and so we're really in those smaller bands and nations, and so across the Chumash culture, they went from Malibu up to Morro Bay, all the way to the Rock, and so that's where the northern folks are from. There's bands all the way down.
There was an archaeologist. He used to work for Exxon or Mobil or something like that. He was in the Malibu Mountains, right? And he lived up here, so he'd come up here, and I, fed him food. He's a really good customer, and I loved when he would come because we would talk about. He's an archaeologist, okay? He works for the oil companies. We would talk about the vertical farming that they were finding in the Malibu Mountains.
Wow.
And how they always would say, the Native Americans were not farmers. They were hunters and gatherers. They were, they moved around and harvested wildly. There is proof upon proof that even in the Santa Monica Mountains, they were vertically farming.
They're taking care of all their soils.
They were capturing.
Everywhere.
They were terracing. They were capturing. They were making swales. And there's seeds that have been permeable inside the soil that are thousands and thousands of years old. That native quinoas, native different types of seeds that Chumash, more than likely, had already tons of stories about vertically farming in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, all these people, were really taking care of the lands that they were on because that was their origin stories, They were from that place, and so they had stories and reasons to love, all parts of that, even from the woodpeckers to coyote
Best
to all
farmers there are.
Yeah, all the animals are part of their religion and their place, and therefore everybody has a place in there. Our hand is shaped like lizard, they say in the Chumash legend, because he went in and snuck his hand in and made us in that likeness. They had a committee meeting and we're supposed to be made in the image of coyote, but lizard snuck in, and so that's where we have our hand from. So we're connected through all living things in our areas, and like I said, from the smallest, if you're able to create space for everything, just like we talk about like the fungi and the soil, and if we're making room for them, then we're only going to have more to harvest and abundance above that. And that's sort of that harvest or that abundancy model. And so that's where we need to look at, if you're putting more into a place and more living things are able to be part of that network, the more you're going to get out of it. So that's what we talk about with having a healthy soil. What does that mean? It means that you have millions and millions of organisms living with you on that same place, so that you all get part of it. The worms don't want to eat what we want to eat, at that time. So there's room, a place for everybody. And I think just being able to put our hands together and to put more of the organic inputs into soils, we're going to get more health and benefit out of it. And so that economy, or that scale of economy, is something that we kind of have to look back at, so that we can say, oh, we're in a very finite, resource base with money. You can only make so much of it. You can only have so much of it if you're a healthy human being. But how do you do more with everything around you, and why? I think the why is the big part of what we're looking for. And I think that's what, a lot of the indigenous stories are so great at, sharing and allowing them to be consumed by all ages,
I think also age too comes, where you get that why answered. Why did that grow like that?
Yeah.
Why did that, why did the seed take there? Why it had all this vast land, but it decided to start its life right there. Why? But it's crazy because you sit back and you look at the bigger picture. Everything happens for the same exact reasons. It was supposed to start there, or it was supposed to do that. And then, if you learn to just be humble with things at times, you get more than so when I say things, there's people doing nothing, right? There's a lot of people doing nothing. there's a balance also within that. It's we need to shift. There's the ones that aren't doing, and then there's the ones that are always doing. We need to find ourselves all gathering in the middle, so that we can still learn, enjoy, and carry on. Because I'm coming to this with, as I hit 13th year of small press, also on the 19th of this month, it will be going on 17 years here in this location at 225 South Main Street. I can't believe that I can even say 17 years of this location, 9.5 down the street, right?
Yeah.
So our anniversary is getting ready to come up. Today, the 17th, I laughed because we were supposed to get a final on our health permit, but she didn't like the bathroom mirror. So she wouldn't sign us off, no joke. So I had to go change the bathroom, my ADA bathroom mirror. So yes, I thought about that a little while ago when I walked in there and I went, today is November 17th. I will never forget when I wanted to cry because I I'm a farmer. I grew turkeys that year, and I had a ton of turkeys, and Thanksgiving was coming, and I needed my new store to be open because this was not a planned move. And here we are 17 years later, children are grown. You know, this whole floor in here was a drag strip with scooters because we would work all day, work all night to get this place open. And
The kids would go nuts.
Cody was 5 and Savannah was 2.5. So, you know what that stage is like. And
Oh yeah, my kids were doing construction when we were doing construction for 18 months.
And Clint was fixing lights and electrical, and the kids knew that they had to be careful with Dad because he was making electrical. So they created a pit road that they had to go slow. But then once they got past Dad, it was going faster, you know. And having how many dinners did we have on this floor as we're building benches and building
Yeah,
stuff.
this is where I know you from. Is this location and being right in the middle of town is great. So, yeah, looking to more years and more things to do together.
It's a dream, and I wouldn't have had this available if it wasn't for Vern Rao, who knocked on my door and told me not to cry, that I was going to sell produce out of his property. And I went, how? And, Vern Rao is a dear friend of my grandfather's. And so there's just, again, things happen. And I guess in my life, I just don't have time to worry about the little stuff. There's things that I'm thinking about right now that have just taken place that I'm just like, why? But at the same time, by tomorrow, I'll be onto something else. So I'm not even going to wonder, I'm not going to waste my time whying, because that why weighs heavy, and it clouds the vision of seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah,
of
or
what
that why
I'm trying
could
to
keep
do.
us from continuing or going forward. And like you said, it just really some input in is what we need, or some way for someone to make an inroad, to finding more reasons to get after their own food sourcing, or to want to share that, or do more for themselves. I really think that this is a great hub for that, and more ideas that we have, putting our heads together and kind of growing community up around us again to hold that. We're so open for people to come and help really hold this and create that. So I'm looking forward to what we can do together.
The small press just makes it realize that it's like a community can come together. But at the same time, I also realize too, Yves and Clotilde, what would we do without them? They are the ones that started this. They're retired. They come home just to run the mill. Oh my God. Well, did you like when I was sitting here talking to Clotilde for what? 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And Yves found her and said, what? Are you retired now? You're not working? She's like, I'm just trying to see my friend. I haven't seen my friend. And I'm like, yes. My husband's the same way.
Yeah.
What? You think you live the life of luxury? Let's go.
Yeah, luckily they trained some people to take their place, and they're not going to be here. So, it really was a great community event, and really happy to see everyone that came through.
I want more of those.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to always be about olive oil and olive pressing. I would love for us to do
There's
more
seasons for so many things.
more food gatherings. And yes, Josh and I are working some stuff out with the Vintage Club. So we will have it going. We want to launch it when we know we have the community behind us, and it's going, but we just need to fine tune some details of some things on my end. It's just funny because
we'll
I
find
don't
a
want to get
season.
it going and then have to come back. I'm trying to get it going, so it's just full steam ahead.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we're doing stuff. So Vintage Club's coming still. Crescent Valley Meats, guys, I still have a few turkeys left. If you need any, crescentvalleymeats.com. But we do need to have that raw pet food discussion, because I got a lot to share on that
There's
one
a whole
too.
show right
We got
there.
a whole show specifically on that. So raw dog food is our main crop now. Is what we're all doing. And I can't tell you how excited I am just learning what I've learned, and just the fact of how healthy we have created this line. So
Yeah, the
super
poor
excited.
animals really, behind us and getting their health. And so it's really great to hear that coming together.
So we got a lot of stuff going on. Check out all the websites. Check us out. I told Miguel when I came in today that I want to work on how to get a live interaction going, because this is a live show. We redo the. Yeah, we can phone in. You guys can. We can definitely get that going.
Yeah, I think we need somebody's phone.
You can have mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have
Our
mine.
phones are always going off, so we'll
You
see
can
who
have mine
comes in.
anytime. You can have it right now if you want. So Miguel's gonna start answering my phone, guys. Haha. So like we need to be able to do that because
bring us more input and
drive the
information we can
conversation
share.
because this is a live show. So when you guys hear it on Thursday and Friday, it's because Miguel's done his magic and launched it out for us. So let's have more live interactions. Drill us, ask us questions. You don't have to wait and find me at Nature's Touch. I am here 5:00 Mondays. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. He wanted to know if we needed to make it at 5:30 so you could be on time. I said no. We're going to tell him it's at 4:30 so we can launch it at 5.
Oh, I like it.
Just kidding.
You tell the
All
people on the roadways.
We're still 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock.
Let's go.
All right.